Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of the RPG Limit Breaks podcast. As always, I am Ghoul02. I am joined by my good friend, GhostKumo. GhostKumo, how you doing today?
Doing all right. Y'all have probably seen a bit of me recently.
Just a little bit. So real quick, some minor housekeeping. We're at the end of today's show. We're going to have a quick announcement with Bob talking about volunteering for the RPG Limit Break main event that's happening at the end of May this year. So stick around for that. But in the meantime, we have an incredible guest today. I am talking about, of course, the one, the only Froob, the famous Yakuza / Like a Dragon speedrunner. Froob, how are you doing?
Doing good. Didn't realize you all had daylight savings today, so I had to wake up an hour earlier. Even your daylight savings affected me.
Yeah.
We don't like it either. For at least the day where you wake up and lose an hour of sleep for no reason other than that people decreed that it was a good idea to get an extra hour of sunlight for some reason. But
yep.
Yep.
It's nice too later on, but like for this weekend and this weekend only, it's also cutting into my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth time, which I'm not very happy about. So
I'm sure you can relate that to that, Froob. Yeah, apparently they said something. They spread so many myths about it, like that it was a thing that they did for farmers, and any farmer will tell you animals don't care what we think time is. They get up at the crack of dawn, they go to sleep at dusk. Like, doesn't matter to them if it's 5 or 6 in the morning.
I think the bigger thing was more like field workers, so you could get an extra hour of working the fields after you came back from school, because obviously kids were working after school back in the day. You know, that's just a thing that you had to do. So
they say that, but I refuse to believe it's not some sort of.
It probably is a wives' tale, but more so that livestock probably mattered less than farm, which, by the way, is completely irrelevant conversation for what's going on today. So,
look, I'm sure anyone here can relate, but yeah. So let's go ahead and I guess give a proper introduction to our guests. So Froob, go ahead and I guess kind of give us a rundown of what all you do with speedrunning. We know that as far as RPGs go, you do a variety of things, and it isn't just Yakuza, which is since shifted to RPGs.
Yeah, I'm Froob. It's like I don't want to be that guy, but I have been playing the series since the original, when it was called the Yakuza series, back on the PS2. I have speedrun other RPGs in the past. It's funny because we were having a conversation about this before we went live. I was trying to think, and I think my first RPG run ever was actually Final Fantasy XIII, which that is a choice. That is an interesting choice. I'm not saying the run is bad. I love that run, but
that's a fantastic speed run. Like one of the for all the issues with that game, the actual combat system and the speed run are not problems with it.
Yeah, fully agreed. It's also one of the hardest runs I've ever done.
I've heard that as well. It is extremely complicated.
It is brutal at times. Love doing it. I need to go back to it. But yeah, I do other runs, very RPG adjacent runs, like action RPGs that have like a lot of like stat based stuff. Recently, gotten into Grand Blue Fantasy Relink speedruns. Also been getting very much into Parasite Eve. Very, very, very good run. Love that run to bits.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, obviously have always carried on running every RGG game. I run every LAD game at the moment, apart from the 2 PSP ones, mostly because I like doing things on their actual hardware, and capturing 2 games off of a PSP is a pain in the backside. PSTV is an option. Yeah. PSTV is an option for Black Panther 2 or Kurohyou 2, but Kurohyou 1 came out so early that, much like Yakuza 3 and Ryuga Gotoku Kenzan, neither have a digital version. So
you gotta play on. Actually, I've got my PSP right here. Have you ever like tried to speedrun a game on like PSP, like Crisis Core? Like you have to hold this like flat brick for hours. It was like Crisis Core is like a 6-hour run. You can do it. There's little capture ports on PSP 2000s and later, like where you can like put it out to a TV, which means you can do it. But it will hurt your hands after a while.
Yes. Yeah, I am unfortunately an early adopter of a PSP. Mine's a 1000. I'd also need to get obviously a RetroTink or OSSC, and it's expensive, and for like essentially one game, it's kind of like, nah, I'll get around to it eventually, just not yet. But yeah, no, Kurohyou 1's QTEs as well on a PSP are just...
Oh, yeah.
They're horrible. They're some of the worst in the series, unironically enough.
So I guess let's start a little bit with Like a Dragon / Yakuza. So you got into it all the way back on the PS2. What drew you to the series in the first place? Because I'll be honest, I didn't really even hear about the series until right when I think 7 was announced, and I had a friend that was really upset about some of the changes in direction with it, but we can get to those later.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I still speak to them like occasionally. I have a friend who introduced me, and it's going to be the age-old story. You'll have heard it 100 times before. He introduced me to this little game, not very well known, called Shenmue. A fantastic series in its own right. And I trusted their opinion like a heck of a lot, and they said to me, hey, there's this one game, and it just come out, and they were like, you trust me with Shenmue, right? You gotta trust me with this one. It's called Yakuza. And they were like, you are going to enjoy this. And I played the original, like, I got it for Christmas from my parents. And I'll be honest with the original Yakuza 1, it was okay. It was a 7 out of 10. It had a lot of issues, which, having gone back to speedrun it these days, has a lot of issues. Especially being obviously the first in the series. And then, like, I think it was either a year or 2 years later, we got Yakuza 2, and Sega took the decision, because they put so much advertising and so much into OG1 with the now infamous memed English dub voice role, which included so many like celebrities like the likes of Mark Hamill, a whole bunch of Elisha Dushku, a whole bunch of like actually well-known actors and actresses. Most of which didn't do a great job. Mark Hamill obviously did, because they just told him do your Joker voice for Majima, and, you know, that works perfectly fine. But with Yakuza 2, they decided, we're not going to dub it for cost reasons, and it's more, quotation marks, authentic, which, I mean, yeah, you can say that is or not. That's a whole different kettle of fish. But there was something about Yakuza 2, the quality of life, the fact that battles didn't take like 45 seconds to load into on a PS2, the addition of Sotenbori, and obviously Sotenbori's map being a lot smaller than Kamurocho, and obviously the story itself, that just grabbed me. It was phenomenal. I still consider it one of the best games in the series to this day. And yeah, like that's how I pretty much began. I still remember, I think it was back in the days of like, it must be like just a year or two before Ryuga Gotoku 3 came out in the West, not the West, in Japan. We got the first, like, it was the first mainline PS3 game, and we got to see it. And just going from the like isometric camera angles from above with OG 1 and 2 to full 3D in Yakuza 3 was just, this is the type of evolution that nothing will happen in the series ever again. And then we got Like a Dragon, which changed the gameplay.
Yeah, so probably to give just a little bit of extra context, you'll probably hear us refer to RGG. So RGG is Ryuga Gotoku, which is also Like a Dragon. That's the name of the studio, as well as the series in Japan. But yeah, so...
Yeah, they haven't just done Yakuza. I mean, it's funny because like what we call Yakuza, like I said, it is all under like they shifted the branding to Like a Dragon for the last 3 games. So I think all of them are under the same umbrella in Japan.
Yes, they always have been.
They kind of did the Sega Persona thing where they realized that like branding under SMT didn't make sense, even though because it's not branded there for that. And they said, okay, from now on, everything Yakuza is Like a Dragon here. But I think before that, everything was branded under the Yakuza name.
It does make a lot more sense, like naming convention-wise. But the amount of people I have seen so confused, I had like so many people go, so is Gaiden the next mainline game? Is Infinite Wealth a spin-off? And it's like, no, it's the other way around. I kind of wish they went with Like a Dragon 7, but I can understand why, because it's a very good, like, new, again, jumping in point for anyone who wants to get into it. Like, if anyone's, like, obviously wants to get into, like, a Dragon series and is very, like, you know, if you look at it, you've got, like, essentially 9 mainline games at this point, if you include, obviously, Zero, which you should, because Zero is phenomenal.
And it's canon.
Yes. 10, technically, with Gaiden, because that's also, even though it's a spin-off, also canon. That's daunting. That's extremely daunting. But the nice thing is, with LAD, the fact that it's a brand new protagonist, and the only times you really need to know like plot stuff from the previous games is near the end of the game, and they do a very good job of focusing on the stuff that you need to like at least experience. As long as you know what a Kazuma Kiryu is, you'll be fine. Like, so you can easily start with like a dragon, so the rebrand does make a lot of sense. As well as the fact that the old name, whilst the series was called that, yeah, you dealt with them, but you weren't really a member of them for very many of the games. For the first game, you were a member of them for about 10 minutes, and that was about it. So...
Yeah, so as I understand it, and this is touched on the series, we won't get too super into the spoilery parts of that, but as I understand it, in Japan, there has been a shift in how they deal with the actual, like, Yakuza as we know them. And as a result, the games have shifted less and less to actually even featuring them as like antagonists, which they've generally been in an antagonistic role, despite the protag being former Yakuza. So the rebrand to me makes sense because, I mean, not only does it, allow them to maybe move away like from that as like a subject, which they're probably going to be more and more because now that we have infinite wealth, the game is set in Hawaii, so
yep.
I don't think it really affects too much on how they're doing things on the Japanese end, but I do think it does kind of give the Western audience a little bit more room to like deal with changes of what the focus of the game is on, rather than just being like the Japanese crime syndicate, specifically known as the Yakuza.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because without going into like too many spoilers, there is a Yakuza group in Infinite Wealth, technically more than one, but it's like they're just there. They're essentially like another gang. Like there is a gang in Hawaii called the Barracudas that you deal with a fair amount as well. So you do have like multiple different factions, but they're not played up to the importance that the Yakuza were for previous games. And it's also kind of interesting because one thing that RGG do very, very well at when it comes to any of their games, their plots are always very up to date with what's going on, like currently, like main event wise. Without going into spoilers again, Infinite Wealth deals with a lot of like actual subjects that are currently like kind of hot topics in Japan. Also deals with VTubers. Like they wanted a VTuber character in this game because they knew that VTubers had been on the rise so much in the last few years. They don't know if VTubers are going to be around in a couple of years, which obviously they are. But it's one of those things that they wanted to, strike while the iron is hot, as the saying goes. And just, honestly, like, there was a news article. I don't want to say it because it's technically late game plot spoilers. There's a news article that came out, and if anyone's seen it, you'll know exactly which one it is, about certain waste being dumped in Japan and somebody being caught for it. And everyone just went, that's the plot of Infinite Wealth. It's like the uncanniness of just managing to do so many good like actual plots in their games that are like very closely tied to like what's going on in real life is actually one of their strengths, I think. And it's one of those things that I think is important for when the games come out and like come out in a timely manner.
Just a random question. I said I don't know the series a little. Do they kind of happen in real time almost? Because the series has been running for almost 20 years at this point. So, and I know Kiryu is a lot older now than he was in the first Yakuza. So they're just kind of almost like, well, we're releasing in 2024, so this game happens in 2024, and this one is
pretty much.
Oh,
yeah. The only exceptions are whether they are set in specific time periods. Like obviously the beginning of LED is New Year's at the end of year 2000. But then Modern Day was set essentially a month before the game came out. The Kaito Files DLC for Lost Judgment, there you are looking for a person specifically in that, and you actually find a picture of said person with a date on it that was dated 2 weeks before the DLC came out. So they like to set, with obviously the exception of spin-offs, especially the historical era spin-offs, they like to set everything like as close to the real date that it comes out as possible. So yeah, it is very much a series that progresses as the real world progresses. So with the fact that they're taking 4 years for every mainline game now, Ichi's going to be 4 years older when we get to the next game. It does kind of make you wonder, just like, even though they said he's going to be the protagonist for the next decade, he's still pretty old, actually. Like, how many games are we going to have Ichi for? Like,
I mean, yeah, he's like, what, 44 now?
Yeah. Like I could see him being there for maybe 2-3 mainline games at most, and that's that. Although again, that'll be another like 10 years. It's kind of wild.
Of course, to be fair, the characters do age, but I mean, Kiryu is like nearing 60 nowadays, and he's still the toughest, the baddest MF in Kamurocho.
Yep.
I don't know the series super well, but I know that like his design in Infinite Wealth is freaking awesome. He's so cool looking.
Yeah.
So
as iconic as the suit is, it is really nice when they play around with it. Like, yeah, I would say that the free style with the floral shirt is also as iconic. Like every time I look at Aaron, he's got it. It's so good.
I love Hawaiian/flower shirt Kiryu.
Yep. It's so good. It's like with 6, all Kiryu does is take off the jacket. So he's still got his like red maroon shirt on and the grey pants, but it just transforms him completely because like you look at him and you look at the vibes and it's like, this is not as serious. And all he's done is taken his jacket off. It's really good. It's really, really good.
Yeah, so we have been talking up Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Because of kind of various timing reasons and all that, we, around the time of its release, we're doing our Persona-based show. And it's been really interesting, I think, seeing Infinite Wealth come out. And despite the fact that Sega released it, like, 8 days before Persona 3 Reload, they've both hit, like, 1 million units sold, like, within, like, a couple of weeks. Like,
the last, like, 35 days have been just, like, here are all of the JRPGs you could ever want. It's like I've got a collector's edition of Unicorn Overlord sitting over there that I've like barely touched. I've been playing through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I have Persona 3 Reload, which I've barely touched. I would love to get into the Like a Dragon series at some point. That came out. You mentioned Relink. I have friends that adore that game and are playing it constantly and telling me how good it is. It's just wild, like how many good games have come out. And then I also play fighting games, Tekken and
like Tekken and Uni.
They're like, space it out, y'all. We got a whole year.
I joked about it myself in that I just don't have the time to do everything, and it's just, even though streaming is my job, I don't have the time to do everything. There's so much. Like, there is a ridiculous amount that has just come out. And the best thing about everything that's come out is it's all high quality. Like, everything is really good. And like, I was one of those people that, you know, questioned a lot about Sega, what are you doing releasing 2 turn-based RPGs within the same week of each other?
I could not believe they did that, just given like, and then like they released Unicorn Overlord's another Sega game, and that's a month later. So they released probably in the last month they have released like 150 to 200 hours of JRPGs.
Yep. And they've, well, Unicorn Overlord, obviously notwithstanding at the moment, they've all done extremely well. Like, Infinite Wealth was, I'm fairly certain, it definitely had the highest amount of players day one on Steam for any of its releases. I think it was the quickest to 1 million releases, although it helps that it's the first, worldwide release of a mainline RPG game that isn't called Lost Judgment. So, honestly, again, as you say, putting it up against, the behemoth that is Persona 3 when everybody loves Persona, and that doing amazing numbers as well, it's wild. I will absolutely hold my hands up and say I was wrong about them being silly releasing them so close in quick succession. They clearly knew what they were doing.
I mean, Square has kind of had a habit of releasing big JRPGs just all around each other. I remember, I think it was it last year, 2022 March, they released 4 games they're hyping up in the span of 2 weeks.
I just remember some miracle 22 in general, where they just released 1 game a week or every 2 weeks for 3 months near the end of the year.
It was ridiculous.
Hello, I'm a fan of Valkyrie Elysium. I speedrun that game. I love that game. Nobody knows Valkyrie Elysium exists. It's upsetting.
Yeah, we've seen plenty of those great Square Enix titles that just don't quite get the recognition they deserve. Got a lovely copy of Neo Twee sitting over there that I'm still upset did not reach the audience it should have. But
I was as soon as Ghoul said that, I'm he's going to mention Neo the World Ends.
I adore that video game.
Same.
Nobody knows it exists, and it's
same.
I remember like playing it. People were like, "Oh, this is out! Like, what the heck is this?" It's like it's a sequel to Tweeby. They released a sequel to Tweeby? Yes. Oh wait, that was right. That was in the Nintendo Direct. It was a thing. It's on Switch. Like, no, it's on PS4. Oh.
Everyone kept going, oh, Neo 20 is just a remake of the first one, right? On the Switch. You already have a remake of The Wall Ends of You on the Switch.
Then they released it on EGS exclusively, which nobody was really excited for. And then they released it on Steam the same day Persona 5 Royal goes to Steam.
Yep. I don't know. I don't know what's up. Like, I love Square Dealy. I've got a very good working relation with them. Again, like, if I say anything about 7 Rebirth in this stream, take it with, like, you know, the fact that I was sponsored to do 7 Rebirth. But at the same time, where's the marketing for their stuff that they're releasing on PC? Or, like, most of the stuff? Like, it's just, like, I really think that when they released, like, Final Fantasy 16 on PC, which should be soon, or 7 Rebirth, if they don't do a good... look at... Again, and this actually, like, this is very prominent to what we were talking about with, like, obviously Infinite Wealth and Persona 3 Reload. If you look at Sega, they've got the marketing for their PC releases on lock. Like Infinite Wealth and Persona 3 Reload would not do as well, like, at the same time as each other if they didn't do the marketing really well. But Square Enix decided on a random Tuesday, here's Neo 20. What do you mean Persona 5 Reload out today? I love them to bits. They just need to do better on that front. It's not just, you know, dump the game on Steam, release a trailer saying, "Oh yeah, game's out on PC, have fun." Like, just, it needs a little bit more effort. But it feels like they only put that effort in for their big releases.
For 16 and 7 Rebirth, they do fantastic with those. People are excited to play them for a reason, and it's because the marketing on them is so good. I guess one thing I want to kind of talk about a little bit with Yakuza is the series really feels like it's kind of exploded in popularity in, like, the last, I don't know, like, I want to say it got really a lot bigger, like a year to 2 years before Like a Dragon came out. It really started kind of exploding, and then Like a Dragon really almost, like, escalated to new heights on where the series actually went, which has been kind of a very fun thing to actually watch.
Yeah, and again, this is going to go back to the conversation we just had. The thing that really took the series off in the West was obviously Zero coming out on console, but more importantly, Zero coming out on Steam. And not just Zero coming out on Steam, but the rise of social media, like the rise of streaming. Like, the problem that the series had, like, back in the day was that either the advertising was off base or it just didn't exist. Like, Yakuza 4's advertising was just, yeah, this game's about sex, thumbs up. There's none of that, like, at all. If you played the series, you know there's nothing like that. So when Yakuza 0 came out, and a whole bunch of big content creators at the time obviously picked it up or made videos about it on YouTube, a gif of a chicken who becomes your business manager started making the rounds on social media, and everyone all of a sudden dropped that old comparison of, is this just Japanese Grand Theft Auto? And then people started realizing, wow, this series has a fun side, which if you've ever played an RPG game, you know that the series has a fun side. It's just the way that it was perceived before was completely different. And with Zero being the perfect starting point at the time of just, you know, you don't need to play these 5 other games that have come out. You can just start with this one with no knowledge. Just made that a perfect jumping in point. And then that just grew traction so much. And then all of a sudden, people now start recognizing the name. And then obviously the change to gameplay also, like, brought up a lot of talking points. Like, people who were, like, obviously happy they were trying something new. People who were massively unhappy because, you know, kind of like the same with Platinum, where they said they don't want to just focus on action games, and it's like, you know, this was your wheelhouse, you should know what you're doing with this. Like, I don't want this to be a turn-based RPG because it'll suck the soul out of the series when, you know, it didn't at all.
Yeah, I think Zero kind of helps from the fact that one of the very first things you do in that game, in a casual playthrough, because I get skipped in the speedrun, is you go to karaoke, and if you pick Judgment, it's like you've just been introduced to these 2 characters who, I mean, a lot of people hadn't yet played, you know, the original Yakuza 1 and 2. You have your protagonist, your badass dragon, you know, Kiryu, and then you have his you know, brother in crime, Nishiki, and they go to a karaoke bar, and then they just play this like 80s rock song in these like suits and this like, you know, whole music video type setup of like glam rock, and it's like that is the introduction to this game, and it's just that's your first, like, after, you know, your tutorial section, like your fights, you get glam rock music video, and it's just bonkers from there for the entire rest of the playthrough.
Yeah, it's a really good way of just setting the tone.
What tone?
Yeah.
Tone Whiplash is like the name of the game with that series.
Yeah. I do have a couple of misgivings about how they do lean into that a little too heavily, especially in certain games. Cough, Infinite Wealth, cough.
Let's go on. Kind of. When did you start speedrunning the series? When did you start there? What was out at the time?
Oh, I love telling this story because this always surprises everybody. Back in 2017, I used to be known as the Titan guy. I used to, unfortunately, speedrun a game called Attack on Titan, but I also speedran a game called Titanfall 2. If you look at the leaderboards for Titanfall 2, the time that I have there used to be third place in the world. It used to be the very third time that ever got sub 90. And the issue that I had at the time, my PC had this issue where if I streamed PC stuff for more than about an hour and 45 minutes, my PC would hard crash every time, without fail. No idea what was causing it. It didn't give us a crash report for years, and then we figured out that it was the CPU, except it wasn't, and I'll get around to that in a minute. So I had eventually plans, because I always loved the RGG series themselves, and it was like, I had plans at some point to start doing runs of the games, and because of my PC not doing too great, it was like, alright, I need to take the strain off my PC. I can't afford a brand new PC. I can't afford to replace parts and figure out what's obviously broken with it. So instead I bought a capture card, and I started speedrunning RGG games. And the first one, and this always surprises everybody, because everybody would assume that I would have gone to 0. That was the second. The first one I did for another online marathon that focuses only in shooting games, I decided to learn Yakuza Dead Souls. The third-person zombie spin-off. That game, that run has evolved in massive strides over the last couple of years, which it's become a very, very, very RNG run, which is frustrating. That run is cursed, to put it bluntly.
So wait, hold up. Rewind a little bit. There's a third-person shooter action game that's Yakuza with zombies.
Yes. That's Yakuza Dead Souls.
What is this game series?
Yeah, the actual like content of the game is wonderfully Yakuza. It was the first playable instance of Majima in the entire series. They slapped him in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and of course Majima loves zombie movies. So he's having a riot. He loves it. They essentially went with the Mad Dog Majima because of the fact that, you know, you're not hurting people, it's just zombies. So they could go completely with Mad Dog Majima. The actual like run itself is extremely cursed. Essentially, as you all will know if you speedrun PlayStation stuff, PlayStation speedrunning, especially on a PS3, is extremely cursed. As we found out, the digital version of Yakuza Dead Souls saves, and I kid you not here, 15 minutes over the disc-based version. And if you change out your hard drive in your PS3 to an SSD, you save an additional 20 minutes. All of that is on load times. Here's the fun part. You've now opened Pandora's box, because Yakuza Dead Souls is one of the most unstable games. You have a chance to crash in at least 6 different places, including the penultimate boss fight that doesn't have a save point before it. So if that crashes, your run's over. It's infuriating.
This is the PS2 classic on PS3, I'm assuming then?
Nope, it's PS3.
Oh no, like if you're saying a digital version, like you download like the classic version, like
it's just available PS3 digital. And the fun fact is, it's only digital it's only available on digital in the West. It's available digital and physical in the West. In Japan, it's available physical only. I know this because one of our Japanese runners started recently getting into Yakuza Dead Souls, no idea why, and they had to download the game off of the Western PSN store.
Oh god! If you haven't used the PS3 store, by the way, recently, it's
bad.
It crashes. It does not run well. I remember I had to download Jimmy Johnson's Anything with an Engine to PS3.
Oh god! I can't believe we ran that.
Legitimately, 25 minutes to navigate the store to just get to my downloads page to download the damn thing.
It's not doing hot. You can tell that Sony basically cut off most support to it, unfortunately. I tried to obviously get on my PS TV Parasite Eve a couple of months back, and it's just like, yep. The PSN is not, for PS3 and Vita, is not going to be around for too long. But it's kind of funny because like with OG 1 and 2, for those who don't know, OG 1 and 2 refers to the original 1 and 2, not the remakes K1 and K2, which is Kiwami 1 and 2. For OG 1 and 2, the fastest versions of those are the HD collection, which came out in Japan only on the PS3 and the Wii U. So we have to obviously get that digitally on PSN, and like, oh, it's a pain to navigate the PS3 PSN these days. And you definitely don't want to run the Wii U version. The literal like speed list of the OG games is literally PS3 HD, then PS2, and then below that Wii U. It's that bad. It's bad.
So
people don't actually know that it came out on the Wii U. Like on the first week of like release, it sold less than 2,000 copies. That's how bad it did.
I believe it.
Yeah.
The Wii U is unfortunately. I love the console. It is very cursed for anything that was not published by Nintendo to do well.
Yep. Yep.
So kind of something I wanted to touch on. So the series is, originally began as a series of RPG adjacent action games, and then with Like a Dragon, or Yakuza Like a Dragon, or RGG7, they did a whole shift to being a turn-based RPG. So kind of poke your brain a little bit on this. So in 2019, or maybe it was 2018, I don't remember exactly, Sega announces the next game in the series, and they tease it, and it's a turn-based RPG. And they're not kidding, because I know we all thought they were kidding, like for a bit.
I remember when this announcement went through, because like I said, I had a friend that was a big Yakuza fan, and he was livid when it was not a joke, because he was like, they're taking one of the series that I love and turning it into something completely different. And I'm like, welcome to the club. Every turn-based RPGs go in other directions. We get to poach one thing from y'all.
So what were your thoughts in the moment when you saw the, like the trailers, and that they weren't, and then you find out they're not kidding?
Yeah, because a little bit of context, Sega released an April Fool's video for Like a Dragon, with it being very much a CG trailer that was essentially what your proof of concept would be of like the turn-based stuff. And everyone was like, haha, that's funny, that's turn-based, that's never going to happen. And then literally 2 months later, oh, by the way, that's what it is. And like, as someone that grew up, like, first console being a Mega Drive and grew up in the PS1, PS2 era, I was over the moon. I was so excited. You had no idea. Like, I remember the discourse, like, online. I remember everyone saying, well, this isn't a true Yakuza game. People still say that. People still say that, 7 and 8 aren't mainline games anymore, and only the spin-off Judgment games that are still action games are. It's wild how much people do not like the fact that it went turn-based. There was some real vitriol about it at the time, but for me personally, I could not have been more excited. Like, as obviously Ghoul says, like, a lot of like turn-based RPGs were going action. Like Final Fantasy was going hardcore into the action part from essentially Lightning Returns onwards. So a lot of like the big named RPGs were very much going action, and it was kind of nice to just at the time, because turn-based RPGs I would say weren't doing well at the time that LAD came out. Like indie ones definitely were, but like in terms of big budget turn-based RPGs, we'd been getting a lot less of them, and it was just nice to see their first attempt at a turn-based RPG actually just completely nail it. Like, it was LAD is like, this isn't supposed to be something that's a negative. LAD is very basic. LAD has essentially 3 elements. You have fire, you have lightning, you have water/ice. Then you have, obviously, blunt attacks, blade attacks, gun attacks. Those are your weaknesses. You don't need 20 like your personas or anything like that. You have 6 strengths and weaknesses. You get told what they are without having to, like, scan the enemy or anything like that, so you can figure out, okay, this is what you're weak to, this is what you're not weak to. And the supporting systems that are in place in LAD are, at the time, really good. Infinite Wealth, like, actually expands on them a lot, which is good. But essentially, like, you know, just being able to, you know, have your actions interrupted as you run past an enemy to attack them normally, but that doesn't happen when you use a skill or, like, magic or anything like that is such an interesting thing. Like, you have to think a lot more strategically rather than just, I'm going to hit the button. And then, obviously, adding they wanted to add an element of, like, the action games where you had, like, the QTEs to, like, some of your attacks, like, you know, mash the button or hold the button, etc., or press it at the right time. Like, I like that a lot. And then obviously the perfect guard system where if you press, like, circle or B at the right time, you'll take reduced damage. Me and so many of my friends that I know, when we played Persona 3 Reload after Infinite Wealth, first fight, I hit perfect guard. And I just sat there just like, that's not this game. Like,
I could feel you on that.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's a really fun mechanic that, like, I'm almost surprised you don't see more often in turn-based RPGs, especially since, you know, Mario RPG debuted the concept, you know, way back on the SNES. It's such a fun way of kind of keeping your engagement while you're kind of playing the game and just going through, you know, any encounter, you're still thinking and doing stuff.
Yeah. And it's a good reward system as well for, like, actually, you know, having that timing.
I will also say, it really doesn't know the lore reason why they're turn-based. It's one of the funniest things, I think, just in any RPG ever. Do you want to go over that real quick for?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So Ichiban, the protagonist for Like a Dragon in Infinite Wealth, he is obsessed with Dragon Quest to the point where he views the entire world in a Dragon Quest lens, which is just such a brilliant concept. So when a fight starts, he just views the game as though it was the world as though it was Dragon Quest, which is why every fight becomes turn-based. It's not what's actually happening; it's just his perception of the way the game is going, which is just, if nothing else, it shows the stranglehold Dragon Quest has over Japanese culture in general. But it's also just hysterical.
Yes. Yeah, no, and it's funny that, like, Sega actually went to Square Enix. There's one cutscene, or 2 cutscenes actually, where Ichiban name drops Dragon Quest, and Sega actually went to Square Enix and were like, hey, can we use Dragon Quest's name in our video game? And they were like, yeah, go for it. Like,
yeah,
it's so cool.
Ichiban even has, like, a DLC costume of, or is it DLC or is it in the game? And it's just like,
it's in the game.
It's like a hero costume.
Yep.
Of like an armored knight
reward.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. What ends up happening a lot when stuff like that happens is a lot of Japanese game developers are just drinking buddies. So, you know, they'll go to work, they'll make their games, and then they'll all go to bars afterwards. And, you know, they're Japanese businessmen. They drink like fish, and they'll go drink afterwards. And that's how you hear, like, so many different random, like, crossovers and fighting games and stuff like that are just, oh, hey, you know, can we use your character in this thing we're working on? You know, we got a really cool fighting game coming up, and I want a guest character. That happens so often.
Yeah, it's always stuff like that, like Noctis in Tekken, but it's always the more out there ones, Ruby and Blaze Blue, and then, you know, Negan, and Walking Dead.
That's so
Tekken,
weird.
Like,
to this day.
That's still one of the most mind-blowing things just ever to have happened in the history of video games.
I still love the Eva reaction. It's just like, huh?
Like, the funny thing is, the year before that, they had Geese in Tekken, which blew everybody's mind by itself. And, nobody thought they could top that. And then all of a sudden, it's like, the whistle starts on the trailer, like, people are just like, what the heck is going on? And then it's like Negan. And then, of course, Twitter does what Twitter does, and they start digging. And one person tweeted at, like, can you put Negan in Tekken, like, 4 years prior to that? Like, there's no way this had an influence on it, but it's so funny if it did.
Mm.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, those kind of cameos are just, like, wild, and, like, we see them a lot in a lot of things these days, and Infinite Wealth does the same. If anyone, again, is fans of a certain Grand Blue Fantasy, every so often Grand Blue Fantasy uses a pair of mascots from Fuji TV called Gachapin and Muku, who turn up in Infinite Wealth. And it's that tonal shift of, like, you know, knowing who they are, what they're from, and the fact that they keep my gacha rolls from me. And it's like okay, I don't know what I feel about you being here. I'm so conflicted.
It's just kind of, I suppose this is probably on the subject I think people would be watching this sort of thing for. So how is the speed run coming out in terms of like how is it coming together for Infinite Wealth?
It's coming, all right.
Because there's a lot more to that game than there was 7.
How long is Like a Dragon these days?
At the moment, RTA real time is like around 3 hours 40. Loadless like just shy of like over 310. Both me and Tom believe we can get that sub 310. Not easily, but we both believe in that.
Shout outs to Tom.
Yeah, Tom and yourself actually. If you weren't there for the GDQ run, the GDQ run would not have gone as well as it did when I was on 2 hours of sleep. But essentially, it should be telling, and like you can never take one game to another speedrun wise and go, okay, because this time is this and this time is that, it correlates to length. LAD's New Game Plus is less than an hour and a half. Infinite Wealth's is 3 hours. No, excuse me. Like, Infinite Wealth's is just over 3 hours. That should give you an indication of how much extra there is in Infinite Wealth. Like, even the New Game Plus has doubled the size from one game to the next. And the New Game Plus doesn't have the grinding issues that we have in any percent. Infinite Wealth speedrun is coming along. There is some amazing work actually being done by 2 series runners, TGP and Meta. Meta did the first original full route for LAD, which, even though we've had like a bunch of different like reworks or like additions by like myself, Ryu, PS Kala, and especially Tom, like the end game of that route is still Meta's route. Like, it's still exactly the same point. And interestingly enough, with the route that's going on right now, with Infinite Wealth having like new jobs, more jobs, changed up jobs, we're still going through a lot of, okay, does this work? Does that work? But I don't think... I think we knew how lucky we were, but didn't realize it until Infinite Wealth. In that, with LAD's run, we have no grinding. Like, you could argue that getting the business to rank 100 is grinding, but it takes 8 minutes at most. You could argue that getting to floor 10 of the Battle Tower is grinding, but we get equipment and money in there that's necessary for the run, and we don't redo any of that. With Infinite Wealth currently, we need to just spend an hour doing optional fights for money, for weapon upgrade materials, for leveling, because otherwise that run is impossible. It's kind of wild how lucky we got with LAD's run. Like, and it's definitely a wake-up call in terms of, okay, like, we have to take this differently to LAD, because for a lot of us who, like, obviously ran the earlier games of the series, we're very used to the action games, and when it comes to, like, the action game routing, a lot of it is, you know, this worked in the previous game. Does it work for this game? So let's take the 2 more recent ones, like Lost Judgment and Gaiden. Lost Judgment, the vast majority of Lost Judgment is using your EX mode to clear up enemies because it has really good AoE on it. With Gaiden, we try the EX mode, and would you believe it? That's also as busted as it is in Lost Judgment, because the blueprint of that game is very, very similar to it is in Lost Judgment, although they have the agent gadgets as well, which help a lot and change things up. Gaiden being like only an hour-long speedrun. It's super fast. Like, but in terms of Infinite Wealth and LAD has this one specific summon. We'll call him Mr. Feels No Pain. I don't think we realized at the time how lucky we were to have him, because they changed up the power mate system they changed up a lot in Infinite Wealth. They changed up the power mate system in better ways and in worse ways, and we have lost Mr. Feels No Pain. We have lost a power mate that essentially takes your defense and can reduce it by up to like almost 50% if you get lucky with the summon bonus that's in LAD. Now all pound mates are just essentially like, we do 1,500 damage, this is our element. They've lost a little bit of their uniqueness, and whilst it's good for damage, it's very bad for the actual run itself, because now the end game that was manageable with Mr. Feels No Pain in LAD is no longer available for Infinite Wealth, and it's no longer manageable.
So effectively, survivability just is not something you have without a lot of grinding right now.
Yes. Yeah, and there's obviously a lot of new like additions, like methods of dealing with fights in place, but it's kind of wild. I'm kind of infamous for having done a certain Chapter 12 fight in LAD at the lowest possible level you can be, which is over 20 levels below what the boss is. It is possible, it is doable. If you try to do that in Infinite Wealth, you will not survive. The way that they changed everything in Infinite Wealth is wild. There's a common misconception in LAD that if you want your stats to go up exponentially, all you need to do is just level up. With LAD, your level up stats are split mostly between your main level and your job level. If you want better stats and better damage or better survivability, you get gear. Gear is so important in LAD, and it is still in Infinite Wealth, but Infinite Wealth changed it so that all of your stats no longer come from main level and job level, they come from main level. That's it. Like, you still get a couple of stats from, like, obviously your job levels and stuff like that, but they have reworked it so that main levels give you so much more. Like, a couple of levels in Infinite Wealth will be the difference between surviving and losing a fight. And I'm not saying, again, in LAD that you can't do, like, a couple of, like, normal levels and survive a fight. You absolutely can. But a lot of the uniqueness of jobs in Infinite Wealth have actually disappeared. In LAD, we'll use one job that's in both LAD and Infinite Wealth. Breaker. I think Breaker's kind of mid. I don't think it's a great class. But in LAD and Infinite Wealth, it's a very speedy class. It basically is all there for agility. In LAD, you get a bunch of... You get, with your jobs, specific level ups for stats. So with Breaker, you would get agility. In Infinite Wealth, Breaker doesn't just give you agility, it gives you HP, it gives you MP, it gives you magic attack. And that's the issue, is it does that for all jobs. Like, there is no uniqueness to jobs anymore. They all just give you, like, here's 20 HP at, like, level 44. Like, there's very little in terms of uniqueness to the job level up stats that you get now. So, it makes all jobs a little bit more viable in some cases, but it also makes it so that specific individual job level ups are not going to help a huge amount outside of just HP and MP until you hit the level 40s. So we don't get to that point in the speedrun, so it gets a lot nastier.
So, and to be fair, I bet this is something that, like, casually you just would never even notice, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
It's really more so when you start diving in under the numbers and trying to optimize for what's the least amount of things I can do time-wise to get to the end of the game that it really starts being a noticeable difference.
Yes. Yeah, and there was a bug for a little while where, this is a funny bug, any, like, stats that you got from your different jobs wouldn't move over to your other jobs when you change them, which is what they are supposed to do. And that got fixed. On my casual playthrough file, when that got fixed, Itchy's HP went up by almost 1,000. So, yeah, it was kind of nice to get that, like, obviously patched in and, like, you know, fixed.
What's his base HP at that point?
I think at that point where I was, I think he was like 1.9k. And then it went up to, like, I think it was like 2.8. And it's
so just
like,
gave him a third of his, or half of his HP, like,
yeah.
Oh my god, that is
because
wild.
I just kept changing jobs on Itchy and, like, leveling all of them to, like, level 40. It was like, all of those HP bonuses, yeah, here you go, just take those. It's just like, oh, cool. Which has helped the run a little bit. And it's very interesting because a lot of what Infinite Wealth does in the background is very similar to LAD. We've actually had, I don't know if it was the modding community or not, we've had a little bit of help recently where somebody's actually managed to data mine the numbers. So what boss weaknesses are, what status effects they are more vulnerable to than others, because Infinite Wealth is very nice in that status effects hit bosses. Like, I know there's a lot of turn-based RPGs that just don't allow you to do that. Infinite Wealth does, and so does LAD for the most part. So that's something that we are now also obviously exploring quite heavily. But the way that Infinite Wealth does things is, and this is so funny going back to the conversation earlier. You know how Itchy really likes Dragon Quest? The damage calculations in Infinite Wealth are literally the same as they are in Dragon Quest. To
No
a T.
shot.
Genuinely. Like, not even joking, that is genuinely the truth. Like, we worked it out. It is literally the same. It's wild. And essentially, because of that, you get a bonus if you hit one, if they have a weakness to either, again, the blade, the blunt, or the gun. And then you get an extra damage bonus if you also hit their elemental weakness. So for certain bosses, like the final boss, I can't remember exactly what it is. I think their first phase starts weak to gun and lightning, and then their second phase is weak to knife and fire. So if you can hit both of those at the same time, you get way more damage. And it's kind of funny because, like, in Infinite Wealth's fights for the speedrun currently, we do way more damage than in LAD. We have one character in the final boss who can do up to 6k damage, which is wild. Unfortunately, the final boss, and this is complete RNG again, they can either not hit you with sleep, or every single one of their attacks can affect you with sleep. It is infuriating. It really is. Hey, we found out the right hand just has a 25% chance to not do anything. I told everyone for years there is a chance that it just doesn't do anything, and now we have the numbers. I was right. And so it doesn't feel like 25%.
I mean, any Pokemon player will tell you 25% might as well be 50-50.
Exactly. Yep. I will never have anything more infuriating than an LED run where Eri, after I think it was 4 turns, finally got poison at a Trickster's top hat, which is literally a 25% chance to cast poison, manages to finally use poison, and the poison doesn't land on Tendo, which is the one like status debuff that you actually want on like actual Tendo. It's infuriating. It's the worst. But that's turn-based RPG running in a nutshell. Like, at some point, you love it. You absolutely love
it. It really does have a charm to it, and like a lot of people don't realize about turn-based RPGs. And it's funny because you've done other RPGs before even getting to like a Dragon, which is funny. I didn't actually know that. I thought that you like speedrun all the RGG games, and all of a sudden they shifted to Yakuza. And you're like, well, I speedrun all the other ones. So I got to learn this entirely different type of, mindset, because when you're playing an action, game, it's a very different thing when you're like, okay, I got to do this combo, or whatever else. When you're playing a RPG, there's, what are my decisions that I'm making? Is this decision I'm making 20 minutes into the run that's going to carry over, now 2 hours in? If I'm leveling up this character, I need to be getting value out of that investment later, or they need to save time immediately, and that's a very different mindset. But you had experience with other RPGs before that, but like still, I imagine that was still a bit of a jarring shift for you at the time.
Very. It's also very interesting because when I've done runs of LAD for, say, RPG Limit Break, Questing for Glory, or GDQ, the Japanese restream has always had an interesting comment when it comes to LAD. And it's one that I've always thought about and never been able to shift. Whenever you have a turn-based RPG that features a hero-type character, like in your Dragon Quests and stuff like that, Ichiban is considered the hero, obviously. But with LAD, especially a bit more so than Infinite Wealth, Ichi is the support character. The hero is the support because of, the good old SMT mechanic of if your main character dies, that's it, game over. So we want to protect Ichi as much as possible, but we also have much better attacking options than Ichi for the most part. So it becomes another interesting thing of, in the action games, with Kiryu what your strengths and weaknesses are, but with LAD being turn-based, you have to protect Itchy. Like, you have to. There's so many things in the end game, like Blade Kill, that can just aims at Itchy and you know it's coming, that you have to protect Itchy. If you don't, then, that's the end of the run. And that's kind of like what we had to go through with learning LAD, was just, all right, at some point in the run, despite the fact that he has very good AoE with, Powermate summons and Essence of Rose Typhoon on host job, like, at some point, you have to go full defense. Like, if you don't, it's not doable. And it's wild. It really is. Like, it's so shocking to have, like, the main character be your support character. Because for those who don't know, with Like a Dragon, you cannot move the leader at the party, and for Like a Dragon, it's always Itchy. There's a second one in Infinite Wealth. They are much stronger, much more durable, and they survive much more. But with Itchy, it is so interesting because, like, when I've obviously done, like, as I said, Final Fantasy 13, everybody in Final Fantasy 13, like, has their uses. They all, like, very much have, like, either their, like, Commando or Ravager, like, on their paradigms, or Sentinel or, Medic. Like, they'll either be, like a tank class or a medic class, but Itchy goes through, like, several iterations during the run itself of going from attack-based in the first half of the run to being very support-based in the second half. Like, it's so different to anything that we've had to do. And as I mentioned earlier, with Metza and GGP doing a lot of the routing for Infinite Wealth, that helps us a lot. For LAD originally, the vast majority of us, because we obviously came from the action games, we had no idea what we were doing with a turn-based game, like, in the slightest. And I think my first run of LAD was 7.5 hours real time. It's now less than 4 hours. Like, it's that one. It's one of those things, and like, as like obviously you were saying earlier, you get to the point where you are like min-maxing so much. We min-maxed attack animations. Like, the blueprint of LAD into Infinite Wealth is very similar in that at the end game you want to be going for your essence-based attacks for the most part, because they're cutscenes and they're skippable and they're high damage. Like, it makes fights a lot faster than having to sit through animations. There are some that you do want to sit through in LAD, obviously, Dire Airstrike, Paralysis Prongs. In Infinite Wealth, it's Rose Stinger. Host is once again completely... Rose is somehow even... Host is even more busted in Infinite Wealth somehow than LAD. It's wild. And it's just... It's one of those things where currently the blueprint is very much the same. So we found this out because of All Sub-Stories, which has an acronym that I won't say out loud.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, God.
Heart's influence is strong in this one.
It is. I can't believe that stuck. Me from 6-7 years ago very much is angry at me. The me of today is very angry at the me of 6 years ago. But essentially, we know from LAD All Sub-Stories that essentially you can get your weapons to their EX level before Chapter 12, but the materials to go and make them even stronger are not available until you hit the Battle Tower in Chapter 12. And Infinite Wealth does something exceedingly similar. So it's one of those things where the blueprint of how the game works from one to the next one is the same. So that helps a little bit, because now we know, what we're looking for. We know, okay, at a certain point, we can then start making our weapons stronger again. But it's just going through the notions of, okay, this boss is weak to this. These enemies are weak to that. What would be the better element weapon to take? What would be the better classes to take? Even though I said I feel like Breaker is not a great job in terms of its versatility, that's getting explored for its speed. Chef is getting explored at the minute, which is an interesting one. For about a week, our boy Zhao, who gets no use in LAD's run, had a use in Infinite Wealth. Good news, he's back on the bench, no more use for him again. But he might be coming back as Chef, so the Zhao Redemption arc might still be on. Who knows? We'll see. I want him to be used in the run, please.
But this is also one of the cool things about a sequel coming out, too, is you're talking about how all the stuff is transferring from Like a Dragon into Infinite Wealth now. And that's not something that, when Like a Dragon came out, it's a completely new RPG system. I assume nothing to very little from previous Yakuza games translated over. now you have some context for this is what used to be good. We can test this first. And the fun thing which happens sometimes, I don't know if this is going to happen here, is when something from the new thing is discovered to be really good, and you go check, was this in the original? And you go back, that was in the original, and you actually start being able to do that. I don't know if that'll end up happening. It'd be very exciting to see if it does.
Yeah,
but that's
yeah. I've had a few thoughts of like testing some things going backwards, but the interesting thing, and I don't think this is intentional whatsoever, everything that is overpowered in LAD speedrun is nerfed or removed in Infinite Wealth. Everything.
Oh no.
Enforcer, dealer, poundmates. Poundmates got changed up completely. They made it so that after you use your first poundmate in Infinite Wealth, your second one costs way more. It's an interesting system. It's such an interesting system. There was one thing that I used to get crashes in Like a Dragon in Chapter 7 set piece. The one thing that I was really hoping for was mid-set piece checkpoints, just so that I could, like refresh my game and then, not have the crash happen. They gave us that in Infinite Wealth. Fun fact, we use that specifically against one of the final bosses who has 3 phases, because what we can do is die intentionally to the 3rd phase, restart the checkpoint with full HP, full MP, and it puts us right into that final phase, where it also removes that restriction of, oh, you used a poundmate before. So we get to use our poundmates for even cheaper when we do that strat as well. So we now have, we now have death strats in the in one of the last few bosses. It's
so
wild.
Silly.
It really is. And it's funny how these new mechanics, Infinite Wealth has a brand new mechanic, not in LAD, and I love this mechanic to bits. Movement. That sounds as wild as that sounds. You get to do a little bit of free movement in your turns, and the way that Infinite Wealth has done it means that there are less Dragon Engine shenanigans. Not that there's none, but there's way less, which is nice. But also the fact that positioning matters for your skills. There's a lot of times in LAD speedrun where it comes down to luck of just, am I going to hit all the enemy? That's why AoE skills are super strong in LAD, because they'll just hit everybody. They've been reworked quite heavily in Infinite Wealth. Not necessarily in a bad way, not necessarily in a good way for some of them, but it adds a layer to it. It adds a very big strategic layer to it, but it improves things a lot. A lot of the classes got redone, for example, some moves got pushed back further, some moves got brought forward, some moves turned from single target to AoE and are still as strong as they were in LAD, like Pigeon Raid. Fantastic.
Good old Pigeon Raid.
But it's one of those things where it's the sum of the differences is a lot nicer than some of the things that we lost, even though the things we lost are infuriating.
And to be fair, positioning mattered in Like a Dragon, to my knowledge, right? Where enemies would be bunched up and your AoEs would work better, and if they were far apart, you would miss them. So actually having some, semblance of control over that and making it into a game mechanic rather than just, well, I'm losing time because these enemies are randomly not next to each other. That's a nice change.
Yes. There is still some annoyance. I understand when I'm using an AoE damage skill, I understand why the enemies start walking away from each other. That makes sense, they don't want to get hit by it. But when I'm using an AoE heal skill, and my party decides to go off to the 4 corners of the battlefield, what's that about? What are you doing? Because funnily enough, one of those nerfs from LAD to Infinite Wealth, lunchboxes are so important in LAD's run, because lunchboxes heal, party-wide, no matter where they are on the battlefield, they'll heal you for, 500 HP or 200 HP, 200 MP. They are super strong, they are super easy to make, they got nerfed completely into the ground in Infinite Wealth. They are actually much better as healing items, but now you can only hold 5 of them instead of 10 of them. Some special ones where you can only hold 1 of them, but the ingredients are now so much harder to procure. There is no longer a shop that sells the ingredients. There are shops that do sell ingredients, but they are on a random rotation, so you cannot guarantee what you want. You need more ingredients to actually make them. I don't think that's, outright response to the speedrun of the first game, but it is ironic that everything that's good in the first game speedrun is completely gone or nerfed in the second game. It's kind of wild.
Random shops are one of the worst feelings in speedrun RPGs, so I wish you good luck with that one.
In my casual playthrough, I have been after mangoes for like 10 hours. They are not rare. I just want a mango. I can make my healing lance in New Game Plus. I just want a mango, please. It's infuriating.
So, if someone wanted to get into Yakuza as a speedrun, what's your recommendation for kind of the best ways to start with the series? Does it pretty much pick your favorite one? Is it kind of is there a specific one that you think will be good to learn that'll help you learn the others?
I would always say pick your favorite one with a couple of caveats. If your favorite one is 5, maybe don't pick that one, considering it's 6 hours long and it's got a lot of downtime. I would always say, like, first, like, and even if it is the longer ones, like 5 or Infinite Wealth, like, always pick, like, the one that, like, you enjoy the most. There's a lot more in terms of accessibleness to, like, getting into, like, RGG runs these days. We have a lot more documentation than a couple of years ago. We have some very, very good tutorials for pretty much most of the games, bar maybe the PS3 era, of which you can pick up most of it from... like, watching runs or just, like, asking us, with the exception of 5 that does have very good documentation again. It's an easier list to say which games aren't great to start running with than it is to actually start running with. It used to be that we would only suggest, back in the day, like a good 5 years ago, we'd only suggest Kiwami 2 because that was like less than 2 hours. It had good documentation of what to do for its run. It was very easy just to pick up and do. If you make mistakes in that run, it's very easy to rectify those mistakes. But these days, it's a lot nicer to just pick up any of them. Yakuza Like a Dragon has very good notes by mechanist Tom. They go very short and into this is what you want to do in this fight. Like, if, for the first 4 chapters, well, for the most of the game, but especially for the first 4 chapters, turn order matters, and Tom will give you the very quick brief. If Namba goes first, you want to do this all the time. If Ichi goes first, things are going to go wrong, so just do this instead and try to aim to do this. So even for stuff like, Yakuza Like a Dragon, where a lot of different things can happen because of, like, enemy positioning, turn order and stuff, we have very, very good notes and guides written up for that. We have a very good community where people are just happy to help out. Obviously, everyone says this. Everyone's happy to help out with, like, any of the runs. It's one of those that just... there's no real bad places to start outside of, at the moment, Infinite Wealth, because we don't have a fully solidified route just yet. And the fact that it is just shy of 8 hours currently is the long one. Yakuza 5 for being the other long one. And then stuff like OG Judgment, which is about just less than 4.5 hours, but 40 minutes of that is downtime, which it's just a really hard sell. I love Judgment and its run to bits, but 40 minutes of downtime on the tailing segments is really bad. That's why Lost Judgment gets recommended, because Lost Judgment has one tailing segment and it's the very start of the game. And it lasts 6 minutes.
Jeez.
Real quick, we're going to be probably wrapping up in the nearest future with Froob. So if there's any questions from the chat, feel free to get those in. We'll relay those to Froob. I do have one personal question. Did you know how to play Mahjong before you played Yakuza, or was that what got you into playing it?
That's what got me into playing it. I actually have a bot command. With the series, like, releases kind of in, like, back in the day, not sure whether it'll happen or not. I was like, if Yakuza 6 comes out, like, at this specific time, I'll learn Mahjong for it. And it did. So I did. I'm upset because I didn't get to play Mahjong at GDQ, and I know you all had a Mahjong table set up. I was so busy that entire week. I'm so upset.
Yeah.
Like, I've said this story a couple of times on stream. One of my favorite memories of SGDQ 2022, the day after my run, when, you get that nice euphoria of the run's done. I get to chill for the rest of the week. That, like, the next morning after I was invited by GK, just like, I'll play Mahjong. Darn right I do. Like, that was one of my favorite.
I mean, that's how I met you, was how you were in the room playing Mahjong. And I know that there is, like, I have a friend that, like, he spent way too long learning Mahjong so we could 100% one of the Yakuza games. So I was wondering if there was a correlation there.
Yes, there's a surprising amount of people that's happened for.
Yep.
Yeah. SCDQ 2022. I was only there for a few days. There was a group of friends that I know through another server, and we had 2 people, or 3 people, including myself, wanting to play Mahjong, and I was like, hey, I know somebody who knows how to play Mahjong. Hey, Froob, you want to come play Mahjong into the game? And we play it, and it's a table of, like, people who I think at that point that GDQ was, like, it was the first in-person GDQ in a while, so a lot of them were playing Mahjong in person either for the first time or, like, we're relatively new to it, so we were just kind of getting used to the difference between that and playing a simulator online through something like a Yakuza where you play single player, or a Mahjong Soul where you're playing against other people. And it's like, I think I don't remember if we played an East or a South game. I think we played a South, and, like, Froob's dealer on the South turn, and he gets, like, the North wind, like, 3 draws in a row, and he just says freaking video games. He says a much worse version of that, but we're not going to repeat it. And to this day, I'm pretty sure that's the channel description in the Mahjong server that we're all in.
I used to say that a lot. I have many clips of me playing Mahjong, both in RGG games, specifically as well in Final Fantasy XIV, and just, like, the only thing I needed for completion was to, like, I think it was to go out with Sumo. Like, a lot of the Yakuza completion lists are very similar between the games. These days, the actual, like, all achievements / trophies usually don't require the entire completion list, which is interesting. Funnily enough, when I said I'd learn it for Yakuza 6 for that completion, that's one of those games. But I literally, like, had been going at Mahjong for about 2-3 hours, and it finally happened. And I was positioned at obviously the bottom of the table, because that's how it works. And the person who dropped my tile was at the top of the table, and the CPU to my right stole that tile. And that's where that line came from, because I was very mad. I was
good old video games. Like, even when you're playing the tiles in person, it's just the wall is just so unforgiving.
It's one of the reasons why I love and dislike Judgment or sub-stories. That run is like 10 hours. I can easily make that sub 10. I just have to rework that route. You have to... So what happens with Judgment is that there is an optional... like, system in place where you make friends with the people of the city. It gets your city reputation up. That allows you to take on different side cases, and you need this one to work with this one. And one of them is Mahjong. So there is supposed to be a storyline with Yurika Tachibana, who's actually a real-life celebrity well known for playing Mahjong. Just another one of RGG's, random... Paul Lim in Yakuza 6 of this guy's a dart player, he's world famous. Like, just random cameos of people that are, like, very good in the sport. And she introduces you to Tachibana Mahjong, which is a version of Mahjong that is... it's so RNG. I hate it. And it's funny because in Judgment or Sub-Stories, to unlock her, you have to go and play Mahjong at any of the Mahjong parlors. The way we do that is to quit out of Mahjong, because it just automatically considers, you've played Mahjong.
The strat for Mahjong is to not play.
Exactly. But then you have to play 2 games at this Wari Mahjong. And what that means is essentially take Mahjong and then add this little thing called Reem, which is randomly placed on any player and gives you way more bonus points. The first objective that you have to do with Yurika Tachibana's place is you just have to go out in Riichi. Nice and simple. So we play that hand out. We actually play Mahjong. But then, and this is the infuriating and RNG part, You then have to win a hand with said Wareem status, and that is completely random. It is random if you get it, so what I do is I cheat. I make a hard save, and we have the usual cheat item for Mahjong that gives you 13 orphans. So I will keep reloading until I get it on me as the dealer, and I get an instant win and end the game. It's the quickest way to do it.
The first time I played with the lucky tile, I remember seeing your clip because I hadn't yet played 2-1-2, and I was like, "Wait, did you actually just tenho 13 orphans?"
No, no.
You just use a tile that cheats for you. So we did get a couple of questions in the chat. First one, which do you think is the hardest boss fight in the series?
Judgment Final Boss Legend difficulty.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, Judgment Final Boss Legend difficulty. I don't even have to think about that. Reason being, to talk more about OG Judgment. I love OG Judgment. OG Judgment has a system in place called the Mortal Wounds system. What happens is every boss, and this is actually, again, a staple that goes towards even the turn-based games in the future, where you get the HP to a certain threshold, they will stop taking damage and they will do a strong attack. In OG Judgment, if that strong attack hits you, it permanently breaks your HP bar. It's a mechanic that I never thought they would introduce, and it is punishing. They never brought it back after OG Judgment.
Wait, for the rest of the game? Or for
yes,
the rest of the fight?
You need specifically to speak to either one NPC or use a specific healing item called a med kit to heal it. And you can only carry 3 of them. Yes. Gun attacks count as mortal attacks. They also break your HP bar. But
I mean, that sounds more accurate, but also, oh my gosh.
Yep, it's punishing. The final boss, if it hits you with that mortal attack, it breaks, and this is with all of the max HP upgrades on Legend difficulty, it breaks 7/8 of your HP bar from full HP. If you're not full HP, you die. Simple as that.
Jeez.
I love it to bits. I absolutely love that system for all the wrong reasons. But yeah,
so ridiculous.
Without a shadow of a doubt, in terms of pure difficulty, that fight, whenever I've done Judgment Legend runs and I've gotten to that endgame, it's terrifying. Because there are only checkpoints in certain places, and if you die in one of these fights that can kill you in one hit, you literally can lose up to 15 minutes. It's terrifying. I adore that finale. In terms of mechanically hard bosses, funnily enough, one from Ryuga Gotoku Kenzan comes to mind. The final boss, which we call him the Gun Pope. You can probably guess why. For reference, Kenzan is a... Is it the Edo period one? Kenzan is samurai-based. You are Miyamoto Musashi, just outright. And the final boss has 2 guns. We call him the Arase type. There is a boss in Yakuza 1 called Arase. He has 2 guns. Pretty annoying. IGG reuses his moveset in literally every single game. There are 3 of them in LAD Ishin. It's the worst. But essentially, that guy has speed. He is faster than you. He runs away, and he shoots you. Kenzan is not a hard game. That boss is dumb. If he runs away from you, he can stun lock you and just kill you. It's stupid. It's not a hard boss, but if you let him be, he just messes you up. I do think I also have to give special shoutouts to Tendo, just because of the fact that, one-hit kill attack, I don't think that's a good mechanic. Unironically enough, I think there is a mechanic in Infinite Wealth that would have been better than his instant kill, and I don't think the Tendo fight itself is a hard fight. I don't think it's an easy fight. For reference, what we're talking about is one of the final few bosses of LAD, in his second phase, gets 2 specific unique attacks. One of them is the left hand, one of them is the right hand. The left hand is a guaranteed crit. It does, between 300 to 400 damage at that point. There is a run I did 2 months ago, just before GDQ. A clip of that is going around a lot of the minute, where he's not supposed to aim at the same person twice in a row, Because Tendo can have up to 5 turns in a row, he used 2 left hands in a row on Ichi. It doesn't matter if my perfect guards are good. There's nothing I can do about that. The run's over. And that's like 3.5 hours in. It's infuriating. But the right hand is a one-hit kill attack. There's many misconceptions about it. Many people think that if you perfect guard it, you will actually stop the right hand from going through. Incorrect. As said earlier, there is just a 25% chance that it does nothing. There is another way you can mitigate it a little bit by doing over 2,000 damage, we believe, but that's not guaranteed to stop it. You can also just dodge it, but that is only really possible on 2 of the characters. One of them has natural agility enough to be able to dodge it. The other one, with the help of an item called Quickness Lemon, which raises your agility by 30%, can help. Doesn't guarantee you will dodge it.
Yeah.
The only way for it to not work is just it not work, or you dodge it. Simple as that.
Yeah, I remember seeing one of your streams and you were like terrified it was going to punch out one of your valuable party members, and you just dodge rolls back, and it was just like,
yep,
just the air out of the room was just completely sucked out for that moment, as like the run had new life.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like I think back to the GDQ run every so often where I don't know if it was a left hand or not, but I'm sure you'll remember Sayaka went down to 1 HP, and like if I didn't get my perfect guards off for those attacks, she was dead. And like every time that I have done, I remember the RPG Limit Break run I did of LAD where I died to Mabuchi in like chapter 10, which was wild. But like every run that I get to Tendo in a marathon, especially live marathons, like obviously RPG Limit Break, I am terrified. That fight is scary. We have an accessory that stops Ichi being one hit, but if Tendo goes on one of his rampages, I have had casually, and this is wild, I think the most I have had was 9 right hands in a row. And they were not all on Ichi. There was one run where I literally had to go to my back line, like actual units of Namba and Zhao, who doesn't get used in the run because he doesn't have a good weapon, and Zhao does, like, at that point, 30 damage to Tendo. That's how bad it got. Zhao did win that fight. He got the last hit somehow.
So we'll go ahead and rapid fire, I guess, a few more questions here.
Sure.
Can we expect the Mahjong only stream in the future? I assume that's for Froob, because I feel like to get that on the Limit Break channel, we would probably need Square to pay us a good amount of money to stream it through Final Fantasy 14. Otherwise, it's a bit off for our content.
I will say 14's Mahjong client is a good one. I do like.
I've actually heard like it's not uncommon for players in Japan to do the free trial and speedrun to the point where you can play Mahjong, so they can play Mahjong through the 14 client.
Yep, you just need to get to level 15 and Final Fantasy 14 with its free trial up to level 80, blah, blah, blah.
With Yakuza 3 all sub-stories happening in the future, which Yakuza games are yet to be rooted for all sub-stories, and which one scares you the most?
Lost Judgment. Answer to both. Yeah. We thought, well, actually somebody did run, someone's actually already done Yakuza 3 all sub-stories, and someone's also just finished Yakuza 4 all sub-stories. So all mainline games are now fully routed all sub-stories. It's the only, I say the only one is Lost Judgment. There is also Infinite Wealth. That one would also scare me. But I'm not thinking about that for a long time.
Fair enough.
So would you do an all Mahjong stream in the future, Froob?
At some point. Yeah, at some point. People have been asking for it for quite a while, actually. I like doing Mahjong streams. Every time we play a new RGG game, I always threaten them with, at some point, Mahjong is happening.
Threaten me with a good time.
Yeah.
One of my personal, quick questions. I have a guess as to the answer, and I'm wondering if I'm right on this. What is your... So this is a series that's pretty well known for its music. Somehow in RPG stream, we haven't even talked much about music, but RGG games have randomly really good soundtracks. What is your favorite theme in any of the Yakuza / RGG games? Your favorite, musical piece?
It's so hard to single out one when the entire series has so many good bangers, but the second that came out, the first thought was either Viper from Lost Judgment or Penumbra from Judgment. Penumbra being Final Boss theme.
I was kind of expecting you to say Warmaker from
Warmaker's good. I do like Warmaker. I like a lot of LAD's battle themes. I've been on a very big binge recently of obviously Infinite Wealth's battle themes as well. I think there's some real good ones there. Yamai's battle theme is just chef's kiss. Love Yamai in general. Great character. Best new character in Infinite Wealth by far.
Right on. All right.
I think that's probably going to wrap it up for us. Froob,
we gotta
thank you. You've been a fantastic guest.
You've been a fantastic host. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So joining us.
It's nice to be able to just talk RPGs, like even not just like obviously LAD, just being able to talk in general and go off on the tangents about, you know, in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, stop introducing mini games. Thanks. I'd like to play a video game.
I'm having so much fun with them, though.
They're so good. It's literally a game crafted of love. Like, it's a good thing.
Ironically, it's a game that people compare a lot to Yakuza. There's like as far as just like the sheer amount of random crap that happens now, which is glorious.
Oh, I like how many people suddenly realize that Final Fantasy VII has always been kind of a goofy game.
Oh, it's so weird. In the best way possible.
Stuff like the whole squatting mini game, like that stuff was goofy. Let's be real.
I have issues with that, and I won't get into why because Rebirth spoilers.
Fair enough. All right.
Real quick, we do have a couple of announcements, so stay tuned while we get Bob in here with some announcements about volunteering and the main marathon, which is coming up at the end of May. Don't forget. And Froob, you'll love this. We do play Mahjong at Limit Break in person, so.
I do need to get to Limit Break in person. I will not. I guess I will admit I was planning to submit Gaiden to RPG Limit Break, but somebody forgot when the submissions closed. And only noticed 4 hours after the fact. Whoops.
All right. Froob, do you want to head out, or do you want to hang out for the announcement?
I can hang out for a bit, yeah.
Oh, we'll do 4 of them.
More the merrier.